Okay, good morning. So we're up to Lamed Aleph, Siman Lamed Aleph, interesting halacha about wearing tefillin on Shabbos and also Chol Hamoed. So that's going to be the discussion. So halacha Aleph says the Mechaber, b'Shabbos v'Yontif osa lo niach tefillin. On Shabbos and Yontif it's prohibited to wear tefillin mipnei sheim atzmon ois, because tefillin themselves are an ois. V'imenichen bohem, and if you put on tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif, ois acher hoya, and then if it was a zilzal ois shalahem, because Shabbos and Yontif itself are an ois, and therefore to have another ois is sort of suggesting that we need this ois as well. And ois is a sign, a connection between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore it's sort of disparaging to the ois that is Shabbos and Yontif, and therefore we don't wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif. Oh, so the Gemara discusses there are three oises. There's tefillin, there's bris, and there's Shabbos and Yontif, and we only need two. Yeah, Chazal say you only need two. So bris is a constant. Shabbos and Yontif will be the second one, and tefillin. So we don't have Shabbos, we have bris. We have tefillin. We don't have tefillin, we have Shabbos. But we shouldn't have more than two. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Aleph. V'Yontif sheni nami bichlal. So for us in Chutz La'aretz, Yontif sheni is included in this. We don't wear tefillin on Yontif sheni. L'didam b'nei Chutz La'aretz. Also lo niach v'afilu b'tiltul. Now this is a very interesting shaila. What is the status of your tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif? Important shaila. It's often happens. Sometimes happens. It can happen. We'll talk about it soon. What if you put your tefillin in your talis bag and you want to get your talis out? So you'll see it's actually it's doable. Let's take a look. Also, even to move the tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif is muktzah. Yesherim gam kein de'asa. Unless it's l'tzorech gufam mekayimam, which means you are allowed to move something. You're allowed to move. Well, please God, we'll get to chelik shlishi, but you're allowed to move a klisa machta l'issa l'tzorech gufam mekayimam. The classic example: you've got a hammer on the chair where you want to have the Shabbos meal, or on the table. So you need that chair. So to move the hammer, which is a klisha machta l'issa, l'tzorech mekayimai, I need the actual place, or l'tzorech gufay, I want to take the hammer to crack a walnut, which is allowed on Shabbos. So that's mutter, right? Well, so too, if you want to move the tefillin, l'tzorech gufay, l'tzorech mekayimai, that's allowed. Kasha klisha machta l'issa. Now, what about if the tefillin, you've left them outside, or you left them somewhere, you're worried that they might get stolen. In order that the tefillin they might fall on the floor, or they might be stolen, you're also allowed to move them on Shabbos. And in a difficult situation, you're allowed to be mekel, and that's how the Biur Halacha concludes. The Gan is mekel al-kain, b'vada yesh lahakal b'shas atchak, u'kameshu kosafti b'fnim. Okay, if you look at number 3, this is our case I just mentioned. In number 3, the note says, "U'misha reitzel ishtamish b'Shabbos b'talis hamonachos b'tik imat tefillin." Yeah, so you've got your Shabbos bag and you've got your tefillin there. Can you access your tefillin, your talis? Kosav akseis hashulchan sheyochel letaltel es hatik kadei letzor. You're allowed to take the bag and you're allowed to move it in order to get the talis out. Kadin tilta klish melachta le'isa letzorech mekayimei. Ach lechatchila kosav shakaf Chaim sheyesh lizohe lehoitzias hatalis be'erev Shabbos. It's preferable to take it out before Shabbos. That's what you should try and do. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotten Gimel, Shehem Atzmon Ois, Bein HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ben Yisrael. There's a special bris, a special covenant between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shenema ki ois hi beini, v'yontif gam kein mikra ois. To Pesach Mitzrayim, ksiv ois. Yontif, not only Shabbos, but Yontif is also an ois, a sign between us and Hashem. V'hukshu kol me'ad Hashem, b'parshas Emer. And all the Yom Tovim are compared to Pesach. They're all linked together. Ois acher, Dainu tefillin is an ois. Tichsiv behu v'hoy l'chol ois al yodecha. And therefore, hoy a zilzul. And it will be a zilzul to insist on wearing the tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif, because we've already got the ois, which is Shabbos and Yontif. The gam over mishum bal lav the bal toisif. Moreover, you're over bal toisif if you wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yontif. But v'hu shenichen l'shem mitzvah. That's only if you put the tefillin on l'shem mitzvah. Aval menichin shaloi l'shem mitzvah, but if you put them on shaloi l'shem mitzvah, ein by mishum bal toisif, then there's no problem of bal toisif. V'gam mishum zilzul ein by. There's also not a problem of zilzul. Im lo shemanichin b'fahesi, unless you put it on berabim, it's also midrabanan. And that would be a problem even also midrabanan. V'yesh machmir b'chol gavni, and there are those people who are machmir b'chol gavni. Im lo shemunachim b'bizoyin, unless there might be a problem of disgrace to the tefillin. If you find a pair of tefillin in a field, then if you find a pair of tefillin in the street or in a field or something, then to put them on to avoid the disgrace to the tefillin, that would be allowed even on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay. Halacha base. What is the story wearing tefillin on Chol Hamoed? Quick survey. How many wear tefillin on Chol Hamoed? Okay, we're split. Okay, says the Mechaba. B'chol hamoed gam kein osa la'aniach tefillin me'atam hazeh ba'atzmai shemei chol hamoed gam heim ois. So the Mechaba paskins that chol hamoed is included in Yom Tov. Chol hamoed is also called an ois, and therefore you don't wear tefillin. Yeah, osa la'aniach tefillin. Says the Ramah, v'yesh oimrim shechol hamoed chayv b'tefillin. No, on chol hamoed you are chayv b'tefillin v'chein nagim b'chol gelilus elu, and that is the minhag in our areas. Aychus laret, says the Ramah, la'nichem b'moed levarich aleim, to put them on chol hamoed and to make a bracha on them. Ela she'ein mevarchim aleim b'kol ram, but don't make a bracha too loud. B'beis hakneses k'mosh Chaim hashana. Okay, let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Gam heim ois, so the Mechaba says that even Chol Hamoed is considered an ois, but Pesach achilas matzah or besukah yeshiva sukkah, because eating matzah and sitting in the sukkah is also an ois, and that you do Chol Hamoed. Vayesh oimrim svir lehu, kiven shematir basiyas melachim nator leka ois. But the Yesh Oimrim, the Ramah says, it's not, Chol Hamoed is not an ois. Why? Because it's mutter nasiyas melacha. You're allowed to drive to shul, you're allowed to cook, or you can cook on Yom Tov as well, or other melachas, which is the Torah Hamoed. So this is going on the Ramah. The Ramah says, we put on our tefillin on Chol Hamoed. Now when do you take, for those who wear tefillin on Chol Hamoed, when do you take them off? Before Halal. Nowadays, says the Mishnah Berurah, we take them off after Kedusha, before in Shachris. Very important to listen to Chazaras Hashatz. So take your tefillin off and you can wrap them up, but just make sure you're still focused and listening to Chazaras Hashatz. There's one day, I think it's the first day of Chol Hamoed Pesach, that you keep them on until after Kriyas HaTorah. That's the minhag, because the laning, I think it says, it makes reference to the pasuk of Hoila Eis or Al Yad Tuchat or something like that. But otherwise you take them off in after Kedusha, before Halal. Sif Katan Ches, She'ein mevarchim b'kol ram. Pirush mishum d'yesh manichem yesh me'enim manichem. Because you come to a shul, and even nowadays there are many minhagim. Some people wear, some people don't wear, and therefore don't make a bracha in a kol ram. The Ramah says, yesh manichem or ein mevarchim. Or there are some people who put them on, some people who don't put them on, and those who put them on, some people don't make a bracha, and therefore yesh levarich b'chashoy. You should make a bracha quietly kadesh le'ovadei machleikas. So there shouldn't be a machleikas. Interesting. And you shouldn't go out with them in public, walking them to shul, on Chol Hamoed, because that's it's not appropriate on Chol Hamoed. The Achronim seem to agree with the Taz that it's actually better on Chol Hamoed for those who put on tefillin to put them on without a bracha. Because brachas are not ma'akev, the sofik brachas lahakel. Of a prat, and especially sha'agro zal kosov, she'ein ledas ha'yeshom ikbashas. The Yesh Oimrim, the Ramah, who says that we put them on, has no source in Shas, says the Vilna Gaon. V'al kol ponim linin bracha bevada yesh lahachmer, and therefore one should be machmer on the bracha not to make it, and that seems to be the minhag. I remember the Dayan once telling me that he once saw me, must have been doing it with a bracha, and he says, no, you should do it without a bracha. The minhag in Frankfurt is to do it with a bracha, but the Ramah, although the Ramah says to make a bracha or do it quietly, like the Mishnah Berurah is saying, the Taz, and the Achronim follow the Taz, that you should do it without a bracha, and that seems to be the minhag, but you should make a t'nai, and this is what he's going to say. Gam kaidim hanocha, continues the Mishnah Berurah, Gam kaidim hanocha yachshev b'daita, a person should think in his mind, and say the following. If I am obligated, if the halacha is that I'm obligated, ani manichin l'shem mitzvah, then I'm putting on these tefillin l'shem mitzvah. Ve'im lav, ein ani manichin l'shem mitzvah, and it's a ma'aseh b'alma, I'm not putting on l'shem mitzvah. U'bozeh yotzi ve'kulam, and therefore you're covered. Ta'af la'soivim d'chol hamoed, ein azman tefillin, because even according to those who hold that chol hamoed is not a zman of tefillin, ein over bal toisif, you're not going to be over on Bal Toisif, because your intention is not to do it l'shem mitzvah. The Chol shekain she'ein lochash bezel issa zilzul shel ois chol hamoed, and there's certainly no issa of the zilzul of chol hamoed. To gam ze ein ela b'mischav l'shem mitzvah. When is it a problem? Only if you have in mind l'shem mitzvah, you're doing it l'shem mitzvah to have the ois of wearing the tefillin. Or tefillin Rabbeinu Tam. What about those who wear Rabbeinu Tam? Ein lanichem b'chol hamoed. You should not put Rabbeinu Tam tefillin on in chol hamoed. Oid kos v'achreinim. The ein nochen shebeis hakneses achas ktsosom yonichu tefillin uksosom lo yonichu. You shouldn't have in one beis hamedrash some put on and some don't put on. Mishum lo yisiskois do, because of having different groups within Klal Yisrael. Umisha ein maniach tefillin b'chol hamoed shemispala b'beis hamedrash manichim tefillin. What do you do if you don't put on and you daven in a shul that do put on? Yesh legam kein lanichem bli bracha. Wow, you put them on but without a bracha. But tzibur shenagu laniach tefillin ein lohem l'shabbos minhagam, and don't change from your minhag. Now there are quite a few interesting notes in the Dirshu. Let's take a look. Take a look first at number 6. This is going on the Bir Halacha. This is going on the previous sif. So we said that tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov and Muktzah, and therefore you can only move them l'tzorech mekom l'tzorech gufam. Now, what if you find them on the sod and you find them on the floor? Then we said you can wear them, you can put them on. But the Dirshu note number 6 in the second paragraph says, tefillin shemenachas al haaretz. What if you find at home, or you come into shul and you see a pair of tefillin on the floor? It's not tzorech mekom, you don't need that place. Is it tzorech gufam to move it? So he says, tefillin shemenachas al haaretz, afilu b'nartzikon, even if it's in the bag, Pasuk Hagon Shlomo Zalman Orach, Shemutzah laharimen b'Shabbos. You're allowed to pick them up on Shabbos. Shemutzah laharimen b'Shabbos, ach lo yitaltlen ad mokum sheyitzeh. But don't carry them around and put them in the right place. Just put them on the nearest place, which takes away the disgrace of the tefillin. Yanichem miyad b'mokum she'eina b'zon lahem. Okay, good. Now, number 10. We said that what is the status of tefillin on Chol Hamoed? The Mechaber says, Osel anichem, don't put them on. The Ramah says put them on with a bracha, but a quiet bracha. The Minhag Hagon, and what the Achronim seem to say is, the Minhag, the Taz and the Achronim say, for those who have the Minhag to put them on, you put them on without a bracha, and you make a Tanai. If there is a mitzvah to put them on, I'm the mitzvah. If there's no mitzvah, then it's a ma'aseh b'alma. But the Vilna Gaon says don't put them on. Now the Minhag in Eretz Yisrael, like many Minhagim in Eretz Yisrael, is to follow the Gaon. And therefore he says, that is not to put on. And you go to Eretz Yisrael, you'll see people do not put on tefillin in Chol Hamoed. So he says in the next paragraph, at the end of footnote number 10, he says, "V'gam k'shemeniach b'li bracha kosav le'el she'osa lahafsik b'dibur bein tefillin shel yad shel rosh." Even if you put on tefillin without a bracha, you've still got to be careful not to be mafsik between the tefillin shel yad and the tefillin shel rosh. However, omnon la'nias omein yesh meirabo v'kedusha u'baruchu v'omein kosav shom sheyesh lahakav lahafsik b'neihem. You can be mafsik between the tefillin shel yad and the tefillin shel rosh to answer yesh meirabo kedusha baruchu v'omein. Now look at number 12. At the end of number 12, what about Rabbeinu Tam tefillin? Why not? Why don't you wear it? So he says, interesting. He says a couple of reasons. The second reason I thought was interesting because it's a sveika. Yeah, Shem halacha karashi. Maybe the halacha is like Rashi. Va'afim halacha Rabbeinu Tam. Shem ein tzarich laniach tefillin b'chol hamoed. And therefore you don't wear Rabbeinu Tam on Chol Hamoed. Now, if you go to the back, in my one it's at the back, and this is number 13. He says, interestingly, the Mishnah, the Igros Moshe says. He says, what about nowadays? You come to shul, many of our shuls, Chol Hamoed, some people are wearing, some people are not wearing. So what do you do? Is that lo siskoideru? So the Mishnah Berurah says then you should do what the shul does. But what if there are different groups in the shul? So the Mishnah Berurah says the problem of Lo Siskoy to do. So Rabbi says over here, B'Shalat Shuvas Ikros Moshe, Bi'er b'kavonas HaMishnah Berurah, she'mishum she'yadu lekulam she'yesh b'kach shnei minhagim. Nowadays, in many shuls, it's known there are two minhagim. Some do wear, some don't wear. V'harizeh kodova she'rishus b'yodai eich linhag. People have the choice what to do. Ein bekach issa shelo tiskoy to do. There's no lo tiskoy to do, and therefore you do find some shuls, some people wear, some people don't wear, and that would be okay. Now, if you look at number 14, he says very interesting. Again, the Igros Moshe, towards the end of number 14. What if you come from Chutz La'aretz to Eretz Yisrael? Your minhag perhaps is to wear tefillin, and then you go to Eretz Yisrael when the minhag is not to wear. What do you do? So he says, Shehabah michutz la'aretz to Eretz Yisrael ein et tzarich lo niach. Says Rabbi, you do not need to wear tefillin in Eretz Yisrael. What if you want to? You've grown up wearing tefillin, you feel, how can I not wear tefillin? Yeah. So he says, so before you come to shul, but don't do it b'rabim. You'll get told off for it. Yeah, I've been there, done that. Yeah. So better to do it at home, put on without a bracha. And he says, B'shalit Shuvas Shevet HaLevi, what about someone who makes aliyah? He goes to live in Eretz Yisrael. So he says, Misha Ola Eretz Yisrael ve'ein menech tefillin. If you go to Eretz Yisrael and you now live in Eretz Yisrael, you want to now keep the minhag of Eretz Yisrael, you're allowed to do so. It's not considered being over on the minhag of your fathers. It's because the whole minhag was only on the assumption that you're doing it in Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi Yashiv Zatzal says, if you want to just try it out for a year, you intend to go back to Chutz La'aretz, then you put them on Betzina B'Beis, so you do it in privately in your house. That's just the final point at the end of that long footnote number 14. He says, what about the other way around? What about a guy who lives in Eretz Yisrael, who comes to Chutz La'aretz, he's in London for Yontef, and what does he do? Interesting. Then he would put on tefillin Chol Hamoed, but without a bracha. What about a person wants to change the minhag? He wants to do like the Gan does and not wear tefillin. You should keep your minhag of your father. Okay, so what have we said? On Shabbos and Yom Tov, we don't wear tefillin. It's an ois, we don't wear tefillin. We've got the ois of Shabbos and Yom Tov, and you've got the ois of Bris. You've got two oises, you don't need it. On Chol Hamoed, different minhagim. The Mechaber says don't wear. The Ramah says wear with the bracha, but do the bracha quietly. The Achreinim says the Mishnah Berurah follow the Taz who say that for those who have the minhag to put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed, you do not make a bracha, but you make a t'nai. If there is a mitzvah to wear tefillin, this should count as a mitzvah. If there's no mitzvah, then this is a ma'aseh ba'alma. I'm not doing the shem mitzvah. And the minhag of the Gan, and certainly the minhag of Eretz Yisrael, is not to wear. When you're in Eretz Yisrael, you should therefore follow the minhag, or just put on quietly at home, but sinner not in barabim. And someone who goes the other way around, who makes aliyah, then you can take on. You're not bound by your minhag of avosov because it was only taken on in Chutz La'aretz, and therefore you don't have to wear tefillin. If you're going short term, then you can put on betzina, and the other way around, the Shevet HaLevi says you put on without a bracha, or if that's and there's no issue for someone who wants to abandon the minhag if they're going to Eretz Yisrael for the minhag of avosov. But if you still want to change the minhag without real need, you're staying in London, you want to change the minhag, then the Shalom Meshiv says one shouldn't.